Welcome to another Tempo Storm Meta Snapshot. Leading up to the next expansion's reveal, players have been doing everything that they can to get an edge. Meanwhile, we've been taking stock of where all the decks on ladder stack up against each other. So join us as we dive right into the standard meta. Leading off tier 1 this time around is Naga Priest. If you wanted to see this deck at the top of the tier list again, well, you won't be disappointed. The deck's consistency, aggressive pressure, and ability to retake the board lets players swarm their opponents without much issue. Naga Priest dominates decks that can't clear your mid-sized or large threats, making both variants of Warlock favored for you. But Control Shaman can continuously freeze or devolve your threats. The next and only other deck making itself known in the first tier is Curse Warlock. This archetype hasn't changed much lately. It plays for early game with cheap imps, then transitions to a slower game plan abusing the strong curse cards. If your opponent ever falls behind, it can be devastating to crawl back into the game thanks to the consistent damage the curses bring. You'll notice that games are more dependent on your draws as opposed to your opponent's, which means that it will feel a bit like solitaire at times. To get to your late game win condition, try to avoid decks that can generate large threats like Bless Priest. Speaking of Bless Priest, the deck finds itself taking the top spot of tier 2. Much like Naga Priest, the deck aims to couple cheap spells and combo turns, but instead of focusing on multiple minions, Bless Priest tends to go all in on 1 or 2 large threats. This gives you more game against decks that struggle with tall minions, but it leaves you susceptible to faster paced decks, which means you'll struggle against greedy control decks like Control Paladin. Control Paladin also takes the second spot in tier 2 as a relatively consistent control archetype that excels in exploiting some of the faster, more board-centric decks. You'll notice you perform best against a mix of Bless Priest and Aggro Druid, as both archetypes have difficulties with your board clears. Lastly, Aggro Druid speeds into the third spot in tier 3. One of the fastest decks on ladder, Aggro Druid develops boards and pops off way earlier than the majority of decks. The archetype performs best against Miracle Rogue, robbing them of space to execute their combo. We'd be lying if we said that we were not eagerly awaiting the upcoming announcement for the new set. Hopefully the new cards will drastically change the meta, but only time will tell where things will head. We'll see you next time.